Glenn Ligon is an African-American artist and New York native. He was born in 1960 and grew up in the projects found in South Bronx. Growing up, both of Glenn's parents were divorced. Although separated, both parents worked full-time and used scholarships to help send Glenn and his brother to private school. I believe this to be a very pivotal point in Glenn's life. He attended Walden School, which was located on Manhattan's Upper West Side. He got to see a totally different community, but also attended a school that believed in progressive education. The school encouraged individuality and creativity within each student. It presented opportunities for students to be fairly independent in their learning, since they believed it to be specific to each student. After attending Walden School, Glenn studied for 2 years at Rhode Island School of Design and went on to receive his BA from Wesleyan University in 1982. Glenn's work gathers inspiration from American history, works of literature, and the society around him. He creates conceptual works of art, and they focus on issues of race and sexuality. Glenn uses many different forms of media within his work, which include, but are not limited to, painting, photography, and printmaking. His work is also known to include found sources. These are found in literature, Afrocentric coloring books, and even old photographs. Most of the photographs that we can find in Glenn's work depict items of slavery and the civil rights movement. They even contain sexual politics. Glenn first gained popularity for his works of black text against a solid white background. The most popular is probably the work that our group felt the most drawn to and is untitled, or I feel most colored when I am thrown against a sharp white background.
What really drew us to this piece was the messaging behind it. For Parth, the piece was unlike anything he'd really seen before. For Cameron, she was really curious about the messaging and what it conveyed to us as a society. For Alex, it was the way the message was presented and the way it was conveyed and how it had a really deep psychological and sociological turmoil behind it. For me, I really liked the attention to detail and the contrast of the colors. And for Hinal, she really admired the simplicity of the artwork and how it stood out in comparison to other artworks who were really, really complex.
So I was tasked with talking about the description of the artwork. The artwork is made from a print made from etching and aqua tint. This artwork is a textual piece, seeing as there's no shapes, images, and the only thing on there is words. It starts off easy to read. But obviously it gets more and more illegible as the piece continues, and it's the same sentence being repeated over and over. This is titled, it's actually an untitled piece, and no ma'am, excuse me, but the sentence is what is used for the title is, I feel most colored when I'm thrown against a sharp white background, from 1992. And this piece is very remarkable in that it talks about racism and identity, which segues into my next point of topic, which is why we chose this artist in the first place. What really drew us to his artwork is that it is just so pertinent and relevant to the things that not only that we've talked about in class, but in society as a whole. And what really stood out to us as a group was just the immense power that his artwork brings. And it's not just pieces like I feel most colored when I am thrown against a sharp white background, but also his similar artworks such as I Am Somebody, which is very similar in that it is also done in grayscale. The form remains the same. It's the repetition going from a clear sentence to a very murky later on. And it very much is relevant because of something we talked about in class in Module 2, the themes of race and identity, especially race as a social construct, and race as an experience. Race as an experience that is tied to one's identity, which you can tell in his artwork because, as he said, it's very much inspired by James Baldwin, the author. And it's very clear that in his artwork he talks about these themes. This is very much done through the color. It's in, as I mentioned earlier, it's in grayscale, which someone else will get into later, is all about the black and white differences in society. And the shape as well, as I mentioned earlier, is prominent in his artworks, is the repeating words, and as well as the value, which stays the same at the beginning and then changes to different clarity levels in the smudged. So I was tasked with talking about the description.
Glenn Ligon uses a constant theme of race in his artwork. The transitions of the blocky letters from clear to unreadable smudges show his interpretation that words lose their meanings. The sentence he used in his artwork was found in an essay written in 1928 by Zora Neale Hurston about her confrontation with race at a young age. After leaving her black community, she developed alienating feelings about the racial differences. The words she used express her confusion about racism. Ligon uses repetition to emphasize a message to his viewers. The smudges are important because he feels he's losing his voice while trying to speak up about the issue. The message is becoming more and more obscured. The words he used convey how he feels among thousands of white people. He also uses black letters, which contrast with the white background, mirroring the sharp white background. The white background against the black letters symbolize the interaction between the blacks and the whites.
This work was a part of the pragmatist and the postmodern critical aesthetic theory. It was made in 1992, and even though that's not a part of the civil rights era, which was about in the 1960s, it showcases a issue that was prevalent in that time, that has been prevalent throughout United States history, and will continue to be prevalent in our times and the times after us, and that is racism. It's something that Ligon grew up with and has dealt with for many years. And he's really successful in depicting race and the effect that it has on himself and his life. The phrase itself in the work is indicative of how he's felt about his identity and his background. They're black letters etched on a white background and eventually fade into a somewhat splotchy cloud. And it really shows the importance of the disconnection that Ligon might have felt to his environment and to his racial identity, and the disconnection he might have felt towards his outer society because of his differences. It's really simple on the exterior. There's not much to the piece, but the interior is so complex. The ideas that he presents throughout his piece are so incredibly complex. The aesthetics within the piece really indicate the strength of the message. The font is bold, it's more geometric, and like I mentioned above, there are only two colors that are complete opposites of each other. When the message is the most clear to the eye, towards the top of the piece, the message is more strong. And when the smudging and the splotchiness occurs towards the bottom, you see the strength of the message diminish a little bit. This was also talked about in the interpretation slide, where you see the contrast between the black letters and the white background. It might have showcased the relationship between black and white people that he saw and that he really experienced. I also think that the contrast between the black letters on a white background might have showcased his particular isolation as being a black person in overall white society. And I think he really depicts his message with his aesthetic. this also depicts his sense of maybe helplessness that he felt towards racism, and the fact that racism is something that plagued him and his community for so long and continues to do so.
Due to the old textured look of the painting, it indicates that racism is an issue throughout history. In addition to this painting, Ligon uses his other works that are similar to this to force the viewer into giving his paintings the full attention it deserves, which I've never seen before. It's unlike any artist that we've viewed in this class. And our group picked this particular painting so we could explore an artist that we haven't already discussed in class, and I believe we did a great job in picking it and the work of art that was with it. His style of art is very unique, and for this reason, he deserves to be recognized for combating the issues involving race, language, and identity.